In the shade of a tree, the girl holds her only coin like it's everything and trades it for a balloon. When she hears a strange boy crying, she decides to give him her only balloon. The girl's gesture breaks the silence of a man who had forgotten how to feel. If you love a good story, please subscribe to our channel and tell us where you're from. Stay tuned. Chapter 1. The Red Balloon. The contrast between lives was stark in Copley Square Park, nestled in the heart of Boston's Back Bay. On one side, privileged children darted between expensive playground equipment, their laughter carrying across the manicured lawns as they clutched designer toys and gourmet treats. Their parents sat nearby on benches, half watching, half absorbed in their devices, a perfect picture of comfortable urban family life. On the other side of the park, almost invisible beneath the shade of an old oak tree, sat 7-year-old Lily. Her tangled brown hair framed a face too serious for someone so young, her bare feet dirty from walking the city streets. In her small hand, she clutched a single quarter, meager in value but monumental in significance. This coin represented dinner, or perhaps medicine for her grandmother Evelyn, the only family she had left. They lived beneath the Charlestown Bridge, in a makeshift shelter of tarps and discarded materials, just two souls fighting to survive another day, in a city that seemed not to notice them. Evelyn's health was deteriorating rapidly, her cough growing deeper, her movements slower each passing week. The responsibility of caring for her grandmother weighed heavily on Lily's thin shoulders. The spring air was unusually warm that afternoon, as Lily watched the other children, studying their carefree movements with a mixture of curiosity and longing. She rarely allowed herself to want things. Wanting led to disappointment. But when a balloon vendor entered the park with his colorful bouquet of shapes and characters dancing in the breeze, something shifted inside her. One balloon in particular caught her eye, a bright red heart that seemed to pulse with life against the blue sky. For a moment, Lily forgot about her responsibilities, about the gnawing hunger, about the medicine they couldn't afford. For just a moment, she was simply a child who wanted something beautiful. Before she could reconsider, Lily approached the vendor, her quarter extended in her palm. The man looked down at her with surprise, then kindness, taking the coin and handing her the red heart balloon. "Good choice, little one," he said with a gentle smile that Lily didn't return. She wasn't used to kindness from strangers. On the other side of the park, 5-year-old Ethan Parker threw himself onto the ground in a dramatic tantrum, his expensive sneakers kicking up dirt as he screamed, "I want a balloon! A red one! Now!" His voice cut through the peaceful afternoon, drawing annoyed glances from other parents. Ethan's father, Michael Parker, stood a few feet away, his attention fixed on his phone. As CEO of Parker Development, one of Boston's largest real estate companies, Michael was perpetually connected to his work. At 42, he had built an empire of luxury properties throughout New England, but the cost had been his connection to his only son. "Ethan, stop it," Michael muttered without looking up from his screen. "We're leaving in 5 minutes. You have plenty of toys at home." "But Daddy, I want it." Ethan's cries grew louder, his face reddening with frustration. "The red heart one, please." Michael finally looked up, irritation flashing across his handsome features. "Ethan, I said no. If you don't stop this right now, we're going straight home and there will be no movie tonight." Lily stood nearby, watching the scene unfold, her new treasure held tightly in her hand. She understood what it meant to want something so badly it hurt, but she couldn't understand why this boy, who had everything, couldn't simply be happy with what he already possessed. Then something unexpected happened. Ethan looked up through his tears and noticed Lily standing there with the exact balloon he wanted. Their eyes met across the social divide that separated their worlds, a divide neither child fully comprehended yet. Lily looked at the crying boy, then at her balloon. Her first possession, her first indulgence. She thought about her grandmother waiting beneath the bridge, about the quarter that could have bought medicine or food. What was a balloon compared to that? And yet, it had brought her a moment of joy she rarely experienced. Without fully understanding, "Why?" Lily walked slowly toward Ethan. The boy's crying subsided as curiosity replaced his frustration. When she reached him, Lily silently extended her arm, offering him the red heart balloon. Ethan's tears stopped immediately. A smile broke across his face as he accepted the gift, wonder replacing his previous distress. "Thank you," he whispered, clutching the string as if it might escape. Michael, finally looking up from his phone, witnessed the exchange. Something in the girl's gesture, the selflessness of it, the quiet dignity, struck him profoundly. He watched as she turned to leave, her small frame moving quickly away, as if afraid someone might call her back and demand an explanation. "Wait," Michael called, but Lily was already running, disappearing into the crowded paths of the park. That night, in their luxury Beacon Hill townhouse, Michael found himself unable to focus on work. The image of the little girl haunted him. Her worn clothes, her bare feet, the way she had given away what was clearly a precious possession to comfort his son. Meanwhile, Ethan had fallen asleep, clutching the red balloon string, a smile still on his face. For the first time in years, Michael sat beside his sleeping son, really looking at him. When had Ethan grown so much? When had Michael stopped noticing the details of his child's face? A heaviness settled in his chest, not just for his own son, but for the nameless girl from the park. The next morning, Michael did something unprecedented. He cleared his schedule. He told his assistant to postpone all meetings indefinitely. There were whispers throughout the office. Was Michael Parker ill? Had something happened? The man who hadn't taken a day off in 5 years was suddenly unavailable. "I need to find someone," he told James Wilson, his head of security. "A little girl, about 7 years old, brown hair, likely homeless. She was at Copley Square Park yesterday afternoon." James raised an eyebrow but asked no questions. In his 15 years working for Michael, he had never seen his boss so disturbed, so focused on something unrelated to business. "I'll need a team," Michael continued. "Check the shelters first, then the areas where homeless people gather. She might be with an elderly woman, possibly her grandmother." For the next 3 days, Michael returned to the park at the same time, hoping the girl might reappear. He brought Ethan with him, using the excuse of wanting to spend more time together, which wasn't entirely untrue. Something had awakened in Michael since witnessing that simple act of kindness, a recognition of his own emotional absence, not just from his son's life, but from his own humanity. Meanwhile, beneath the Charlestown Bridge, Lily held her grandmother's frail hand as Evelyn's breathing grew more labored. The medicine they needed remained out of reach, the quarter long gone. Lily whispered stories to distract them both from their hunger and the approaching chill of evening. "Tell me again about the balloon," Evelyn whispered between coughs. "It was red, Grandma, shaped like a heart," Lily described, her voice soft but animated. "It danced in the wind like it was alive, and the little boy stopped crying when I gave it to him." Evelyn smiled weakly. "You've always had the biggest heart, my Lily." She didn't add what they both knew. That kindness rarely changed their circumstances. The world had forgotten them, pushed them aside like the inconvenient reminders of societal failure that they were. What neither Lily nor Evelyn could know was that across the city, a search was underway. A man whose life had been transformed by a child's simple generosity was about to change theirs forever, beginning a journey none of them could have anticipated, a journey that would challenge notions of family, redemption, and what it truly means to see another human being. Chapter 2. The Search. A week had passed since the encounter in the park. Michael Parker sat in his corner office overlooking Boston Harbor, the city spread before him like a kingdom he had helped build. On his desk sat a folder containing preliminary reports from the search team he had assembled. So far, they had found nothing. The girl seemed to have vanished. "We've checked every shelter in the city," James reported, standing before Michael's desk. "No one matching her description has sought help recently. If she's homeless, she's likely not in the system." Michael nodded, unsurprised. His instincts told him this child existed on the margins, invisible to the social safety nets that were supposed to catch people like her. "Expand the search," he instructed, Check under bridges, abandoned buildings, anywhere people might seek. Shelter unofficially. James hesitated. Michael, may I ask why this is so important? We've diverted significant resources to finding one homeless child. There are thousands in this city. Michael turned to the window, watching boats cut through the harbor waters. How could he explain what he himself didn't fully understand? That moment in the park had cracked something open inside him, a recognition of his own moral bankruptcy, of how far he had strayed from the person he once aspired to be. "I need to find her," was all he said. At home that evening, Michael found himself truly engaging with his son for the first time in years. They built a fort in the living room, read stories and talked about school, simple activities that Michael had always delegated to nannies, citing the pressures of work. "Daddy," Ethan asked as Michael tucked him into bed, "will we ever see the balloon girl again?" Michael smoothed his son's hair. "I hope so, buddy. I'm looking for her." "Why?" Ethan's innocent question pierced through Michael's carefully constructed justifications. "Because," Michael started, then paused to find the right words. "Sometimes we meet people who remind us of important things we've forgotten." Across the city, beneath the Charlestown Bridge, Lily huddled against her grandmother, trying to share what little body heat she had. The spring nights were still cold, and Evelyn's cough had worsened considerably. They had eaten nothing that day except half a sandwich given to them by a kind restaurant worker. "Grandma, please drink some water," Lily urged, holding a salvaged plastic bottle to Evelyn's cracked lips. Evelyn took a small sip, then pushed it away. "Save it, Flower. You need it more." "I found these," Lily said, producing 2 slightly bruised apples she had collected from behind a grocery store. "The man said they were too old to sell, but they're still good." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. At 67, she had never imagined ending her life like this. After losing her daughter, Lily's mother, to illness 3 years ago, she had struggled to maintain their apartment on her meager social security. When the building was sold to a luxury developer, they had been evicted with nowhere to go. Their story was common in rapidly gentrifying Boston, where affordable housing disappeared daily under the pressure of development. The irony that one such developer was now searching for them would have been laughable if either had known. Next morning, James Wilson expanded his search to the area beneath the city's bridges. It was under the Charlestown Bridge that he finally spotted them, a small girl with tangled brown hair, helping an elderly woman drink water from a plastic bottle. James approached cautiously, aware that homeless individuals often distrusted authorities with good reason. "Excuse me," he called softly. Lily's head snapped up, her body immediately positioning itself protectively in front of her grandmother. "We're not doing anything wrong," she said, her voice small but defiant. "This is public property." James crouched down to appear less threatening. "I'm not here to move you along. My name is James. I'm looking for a little girl who was in Copley Square Park last week, who gave a red balloon to a little boy. I think that might be you." Suspicion flashed across Lily's face. "Why?" "The boy's father would like to thank you. He's been looking for you." Evelyn placed a trembling hand on Lily's shoulder. "What does he want with my granddaughter?" James chose his words carefully. He was moved by her kindness. "He'd like to help you both, if you'll let him." Lily and Evelyn exchanged glances, a lifetime of disappointment, making them wary of promises from strangers. "We don't need charity," Evelyn said, with as much dignity as she could muster while sitting on cardboard beneath a bridge. "It's not charity," James replied. "It's gratitude." He reached into his pocket and produced a business card. "This is Michael Parker. He's my employer. You can call him yourself from my phone if you'd like." Evelyn took the card, her eyes widening slightly at the name. Living on the streets, she had heard of Parker Development. They were responsible for some of the very luxury buildings that had pushed people like her out of their homes. "The developer?" she asked, her voice taking on an edge. "What does someone like him want with people like us?" James sighed. "I know how it sounds, but I've worked for Michael Parker for 15 years, and I've never seen him like this. Something about your granddaughter's gesture affected him deeply. He just wants to talk." Lily looked from James to her grandmother, confusion evident on her young face. Adults and their complications were often beyond her understanding, but she did recognize that her grandmother needed help, soon. "Grandma's sick," she said simply. "She needs medicine." James nodded, seeing an opening. "If you come with me, we can get her to a doctor right away." Evelyn wanted to refuse, pride warring with necessity, but one look at Lily's hopeful face made the decision for her. "Just the doctor," she conceded. "Then we'll decide about meeting this Mr. Parker." Within an hour, they were at Massachusetts General Hospital, where Evelyn was diagnosed with severe pneumonia and admitted immediately. Michael Parker, notified by James, arrived shortly after, bringing Ethan with him. The boy recognized Lily instantly. "Balloon girl!" he exclaimed, rushing toward her in the hospital waiting room. "You came back!" Lily, overwhelmed by the sterile environment and the sudden attention, stood frozen as Ethan wrapped his arms around her in an enthusiastic hug. Michael approached more, cautiously, taking in the girl's appearance, the worn clothes, the wary eyes that looked much older than her 7 years. "Hello, Lily," he said, having learned her name from James. "I'm Michael, Ethan's dad. Thank you for what you did for my son last week." Lily said nothing, her eyes darting toward the hallway where doctors were treating her grandmother. Michael followed her gaze. "Your grandmother is getting the best care possible, I've made sure of it." "Why?" Lily finally spoke, her voice barely audible. "Why are you helping us?" It was a question Michael had been asking himself for days. He crouched down to her level, much as James had done earlier. "Because you showed me something important. You showed me what it means to give when giving costs you everything." Lily's expression remained guarded. This man in his expensive suit, with his perfect hair and confident manner, was from a world entirely separate from hers, a world that had repeatedly shown her there was no place in it for people like her and Evelyn. "We can't pay you back," she said matter-of-factly. Michael was struck by the adult pragmatism in her voice. "I don't want you to pay me back, I want to help you and your grandmother." A doctor emerged from Evelyn's room then, approaching Michael as if he were the responsible party. "Mr. Parker, we've stabilized Mrs. Collins, but she's severely malnourished, and her pneumonia is quite advanced. She'll need to remain hospitalized for at least a week, possibly longer." Lily's face crumpled at this news. "Where will I go?" she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Michael exchanged glances with James, who stood nearby. They had anticipated this problem but hadn't, yet determined a solution. Child Protective Services would typically be called in such a situation, but Michael was reluctant to involve a system that might separate Lily from her grandmother. "She could stay with us," Ethan piped up, tugging at his father's sleeve. "We have lots of room." The suggestion, innocent and spontaneous, hung in the air. Michael considered it seriously for the first time. His townhouse did indeed have several empty guest rooms. It would be temporary, just until Evelyn recovered. But the implications were enormous, legal, practical, and emotional. "Would that be okay with you, Lily?" Michael asked carefully. "Just until your grandmother gets better? You could visit her every day." Lily looked from Michael to Ethan, then back to the hallway where Evelyn lay fighting for her life. The choice before her wasn't really a choice at all. She had nowhere else to go, and the alternative was foster care, something Evelyn had always feared for her. "Can I see my grandma first?" she asked. "Of course," Michael replied, relief washing over him. It was a small step, a tentative beginning. As they walked toward Evelyn's room, Michael placed a gentle hand on Lily's shoulder, feeling her tense beneath his touch. There were worlds between them, of experience, of privilege, of understanding. Bridging those worlds would require more than good intentions. It would demand patience, humility, and a willingness to truly see one another. Behind them, Ethan skipped happily, already planning all the things he would show his new friend. In his 5-year-old mind, the arrangement was perfectly logical. Lily had given him something precious, and now they would give her a home in return. The complexities that the adults recognized were invisible to him, his view of the situation unclouded by the prejudices and assumptions that came with age. What none of them could know was how this temporary arrangement would permanently alter all their lives. challenging everything Michael thought he knew about family, success, and what truly matters in a world that so often confuses price with value. Chapter 3. New Beginnings. The Parker townhouse on Beacon Hill stood as a monument to success. 4. Stories of meticulous restoration and modern luxury, with gleaming hardwood floors, museum-quality art, and furnishings featured in architectural magazines. As Michael's car pulled into the private driveway, Lily pressed her face against the window, her eyes wide at the grandeur before her. "Is this your house?" she whispered to Ethan, who sat beside her in his booster seat, swinging his legs excitedly. "Uh-huh," Ethan nodded. "And you're going to stay in the blue room. It's right next to mine." Michael watched Lily through the rearview mirror, noting how small she looked against the backdrop of his world. The social worker had provided emergency temporary placement, authorization after hours of phone calls, and Michael's assurances of financial responsibility. It was a stopgap measure, highly unusual, but made possible by Michael's connections and reputation. A more formal hearing would be scheduled within the week. "Here we are," Michael announced, trying to sound casual as he opened the car door for Lily. "Home sweet home." Lily stepped out cautiously, clutching a small plastic bag containing her only possessions, a faded photograph of her mother, a threadbare stuffed rabbit, and a change of clothes provided by hospital staff. She followed Michael and Ethan up the stone steps, her movements hesitant, as if afraid of leaving marks on the pristine surfaces. Inside, the house was quiet and immaculate. Mrs. Reynolds, the housekeeper, had prepared the guest room as instructed, and left a light dinner in the warming drawer. Michael had given the rest of the staff the evening off, wanting to minimize Lily's sense of being on display. "Would you like to see your room?" Michael asked gently. Lily nodded, following him up the curved staircase, her hand barely touching the polished banister. The guest room, the blue room as Ethan had called it, was larger than any space Lily had ever occupied. A queen-sized bed with a canopy dominated the center, covered in plush pillows and a down comforter. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with children's classics that had once belonged to Ethan, but were now too young for him. "The bathroom is through there," Michael explained, pointing to a door. "There are towels, soap, shampoo, everything you might need, and I've asked Mrs. Reynolds to pick up some clothes for you tomorrow. For tonight, there's a nightgown on the bed." Lily stood in the center of the room, overwhelmed. The nightgown, laid out for her, was pale pink with lace trim, the kind of thing she had seen on store mannequins, but never imagined wearing. "Thank you," she said quietly, though the words felt inadequate for what she was feeling. "Dinner will be ready in about 30 minutes, Michael continued. "Come down when you're ready. No rush." Left alone, Lily explored the room with cautious curiosity. She ran her fingers over the spines of books, tested the softness of the carpet with her bare toes, and peered out the window at the garden below. The bathroom, with its marble countertops and heated floors, bewildered her further. She turned the shower on and off several times, amazed at the instant hot water. When she finally came downstairs, freshly showered but still wearing her old clothes rather than the nightgown, she found Michael and Ethan setting the table together, a domestic scene that seemed at odds with the formal dining room. "There you are," Michael smiled. "Feel better?" Lily nodded, hovering at the edge of the room. "I didn't know how to use all the buttons in the shower." "That's okay. It took me a while to figure them out too," Michael admitted, trying to put her at ease. "Are you hungry?" Dinner was a simple affair of roast chicken, vegetables, and rice, comfort food that Michael hoped would appeal to Lily. Still, he noticed how she ate slowly, taking small bites as if rationing the food, occasionally glancing at him as if for permission to continue. "You can have as much as you want," he assured her. "There's plenty." Ethan, oblivious to the tension, chattered happily throughout the meal, telling Lily about his school, his friends, and all the toys he wanted to show her. His unguarded enthusiasm provided a welcome buffer against the awkwardness that might have otherwise prevailed. After dinner, Michael suggested a movie in the media room, but Lily's eyelids were growing heavy. The day's events, combined with a full stomach and the emotional exhaustion of her circumstances, were taking their toll. Perhaps tomorrow, Michael said, noticing her fatigue. It's been a long day for everyone. He walked her back to her room, Ethan trailing behind, disappointed at the postponement of their play plans. At the door, Lily turned to Michael, her expression serious beyond her years. "Will you take me to see Grandma tomorrow?" "First thing in the morning," Michael promised. "The doctors said visiting hours start at 9. Satisfied with this answer, Lily entered her room, closing the door gently behind her. Michael stood there for a moment, listening, before guiding Ethan to his own bedroom for his nightly routine. Later, after Ethan was asleep, Michael sat in his study, a glass of whiskey untouched beside him. On his laptop screen was the beginnings of a legal document, his attorney's preliminary thoughts on petitioning for temporary guardianship of Lily while Evelyn recovered. The process would be complicated, requiring background checks, home studies, and court appearances. Already there were questions about Michael's motivations and suitability. It's highly unusual for a single man with no relation to the child to seek guardianship, his attorney had warned earlier that day. The courts will scrutinize this case carefully. Michael understood the concerns. From the outside, his sudden interest in a homeless child appeared suspicious at best, a wealthy man's attempt at personal redemption at worst. How could he explain that in that moment in the park, watching Lily give away her only treasure? Something fundamental had shifted inside him. That the gesture had awakened him to the emptiness of his own existence, to his failure as a father and as a human being. A soft sound from the hallway interrupted his thoughts. Michael looked up to see Lily standing in the doorway, her small frame illuminated by the hall light. She was still in her day clothes, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. "Lily? Is everything okay?" Michael asked, closing his laptop. "I can't sleep," she admitted. "The bed is too soft." Michael nodded, understanding. After sleeping on the ground for so long, the plush mattress probably felt alien to her. "Would you like some pillows on the floor instead?" Lily hesitated, then nodded. "And can I call Grandma, just to say good night?" Michael glanced at his watch, nearly 11. "The hospital might not," he began, then stopped himself. What harm could it do? "Let me try," he said, reaching for his phone. To his surprise, the hospital put the call through. Evelyn's voice was weak but alert as she spoke to her granddaughter, reassuring her that she was being well cared for and would see her soon. Michael stepped out of the room to give Lily privacy, but he could hear the change in her voice, the relief, the momentary return to childhood as she told her grandmother about the big house and the blue room. When the call ended, Lily seemed calmer. Together they arranged pillows and blankets on the floor beside the bed. As Michael turned to leave, Lily's voice stopped him. "Why are you doing all this?" she asked, echoing the question she had posed at the hospital. "Really?" Michael paused in the doorway, considering his answer carefully. "I think," he said slowly, "sometimes we're given chances to become better versions of ourselves. You gave Ethan that balloon without expecting anything in return. It made me realize how long it's been since I've done anything that wasn't calculated for some benefit." Lily considered this, her expression thoughtful. "Grandma says kindness always comes back to you, but not always in ways you expect." "Your grandmother sounds very wise," Michael replied, smiling slightly. "She is," Lily affirmed, settling onto her makeshift bed. "She taught me everything important." The next morning brought the promised visit to the hospital. Evelyn was sitting up in bed, color returning to her cheeks, though worry lined her face when Lily entered the room. The girl rushed to her grandmother's side, climbing onto the bed to hug her tightly. Michael and Ethan hung back, giving them space for their reunion. He could hear Lily's excited whispers as she described the Parker home in detail, from the shower with 1,000,000 buttons to the kitchen, bigger than our whole place under the bridge. Evelyn's eyes met Michael's over Lily's head, her gaze assessing and protective. "Mr. Parker," she acknowledged with a nod. "Thank you for bringing her." Michael stepped forward. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Collins?" "Better, thanks to your intervention," Evelyn replied, her tone measured. "The doctors tell me I've been given the VIP treatment. I assume that's your doing." Michael nodded, unapologetic. "You deserve the best care available." Evelyn's expression softened slightly. May I speak with you privately for a moment? Michael arranged for a nurse to take Ethan and Lily to the hospital cafeteria for ice cream, promising they wouldn't be long. When they were alone, Evelyn straightened in her bed, summoning whatever dignity her hospital gown would allow. "Mr. Parker, I need to understand what's happening here," she began. "Why have you taken such an interest in my granddaughter?" Michael had anticipated this conversation. "Mrs. Collins, I know how this must look. Her wealthy stranger suddenly inserting himself into your lives. It looks like charity," Evelyn interrupted, "or worse, like you're shopping for a good deed to ease your conscience." The bluntness of her assessment caught Michael off guard. "That's not—" "Let me finish," Evelyn continued firmly. "Lily is all I have in this world, and I am all she has. The doctors tell me I'll be here for at least 2 weeks, possibly longer. They also tell me that at my age, with my history of untreated health issues, full recovery isn't guaranteed." Michael felt a chill at her words. "Mrs. Collins, I need to know," Evelyn pressed on, "that whatever arrangement you've made for Lily isn't just temporary kindness that will disappear when it becomes inconvenient. She's had enough disappointment in her life." The question hung between them, a challenge from a woman who had nothing left to lose. Michael considered his answer carefully, aware that his words would be measured against future actions. "When Lily gave that balloon to my son," he finally said, "she taught me something I'd forgotten. That real wealth isn't in what we keep, but in what we're willing to give away. I can't explain it rationally, Mrs. Collins, but in that moment, I felt I'd been given a chance to rediscover my own humanity." Evelyn studied him, searching for sincerity in his expensive suit and confident demeanor. "And if I don't recover as expected, what then?" The question pierced through Michael's carefully constructed narrative. What then indeed? He hadn't allowed himself to consider that possibility. "Don't know," he admitted honestly. "But I promise you this, Lily will not be abandoned again, not by me." Something in his voice must have convinced her, because Evelyn nodded slowly. "She's not a project, Mr. Parker. She's not something broken for you to fix. She's perfect exactly as she is." "I know that," Michael replied softly. "Better than you might think." Their conversation was interrupted by the return of the children, Ethan's face smeared with chocolate ice cream, Lily more reserved, but clearly happier than she had been the previous evening. As they prepared to leave, Evelyn called Lily back for one more hug. "Be good, Flower," she whispered, "and remember who you are. No matter where you sleep or what clothes you wear, you're still my Lily." Lily nodded solemnly, understanding the deeper message in her grandmother's words. "I'll come back tomorrow," she promised. Outside the hospital, as they walked toward the car, Lily reached for Michael's hand, a small gesture of trust that caught him by surprise. He closed his fingers gently around hers, aware of the responsibility he had just accepted, far beyond what any court document could define. Chapter 4. Growing Pains. 2 weeks passed, settling into an unexpected rhythm. Lily began attending Ethan's prestigious private school as a temporary guest student, an arrangement Michael had secured through a substantial donation. Each morning, they rode together in the town car, Ethan chattering excitedly while Lily gazed out the window, absorbing the transition between worlds. At school, the contrast between them was stark. Ethan moved through the hallways with the easy confidence of belonging, while Lily navigated the social landscape with cautious observation. Despite the uniform that supposedly equalized appearances, the other children seemed to sense her difference. An outsider status that no pressed blazer could disguise. "Why does she talk like that?" one girl whispered loudly during lunch on Lily's 3rd day. "My mom says she's a charity case," another replied. "Mr. Parker is helping her because her family is poor." Lily pretended not to hear, focusing intently on her sandwich, but Ethan had no such restraint. "She's not a charity," he declared indignantly. "She's my friend, and she lives with us now, and she gave me her balloon when she didn't have to." The simple defense, delivered with childish certainty, silenced the whispers, temporarily. Later, when Lily thanked him, Ethan shrugged as if the matter were obvious. "You're part of our family now," he said with 5-year-old logic. "Dad said so." Meanwhile, Michael faced his own challenges. The initial emergency placement had been extended, but formalization of the guardianship arrangement was proving complicated. His attorney, Eleanor Watkins, didn't mince words during their meeting in his office. "The judge has concerns," she explained, organizing papers on Michael's desk. "You're a single father with a demanding career, no prior connection to this child, and frankly, a reputation as a ruthless businessman. Social Services is questioning your motivations." Michael pinched the bridge of his nose, fighting a growing headache. "I've provided everything they've asked for: background checks, financial statements, character references. What more do they want?" Eleanor regarded him carefully. "They want to know why, Michael. Why this child? Why now? And they're not the only ones asking. The board is concerned about your recent distraction." It was true. In the weeks since finding Lily, Michael had delegated more responsibilities, left the office earlier, and turned down 2 major development opportunities that would have required significant travel. The whispers had started. Was Michael Parker losing his edge? "I don't care what the board thinks," Michael replied, though they both knew it wasn't that simple. "And my reasons are my own." "That's not good enough for family court," Eleanor countered. "You need to demonstrate that this arrangement is in Lily's best interest, not just an impulsive act of charity." Before Michael could respond, his phone rang. The school. Lily had become upset during class and was now refusing to speak to anyone. Could he come right away? 20 minutes later, Michael found Lily sitting alone in the nurse's office, her face tear-streaked but composed, her posture rigid with the effort of containing her emotions. "What happened?" he asked gently, crouching before her. Lily stared at her hands. "They wanted us to draw our families for Parents' Day. I don't know what to draw anymore." The simplicity of the problem struck Michael with unexpected force. Of course, the school was preparing for their annual Parents' Day celebration, where families would tour classrooms and admire student work. For Lily, the assignment was a painful reminder of her uncertain status. "You could draw Evelyn," Michael suggested. "She's your family." Lily nodded slowly. "But she's still in the hospital. And they want the drawings to be about who we live with now." She looked up at him, her expression searching. "Are you my family? Is Ethan?" The question hung between them, weighted with implications neither fully understood. Legally, the answer was no. Michael was merely a temporary guardian. But in the daily reality they had created, the lines had blurred. Michael hesitated, searching for the right words. "We're people who care about you very much. People who want you to be safe and happy." It wasn't the answer Lily was looking for, but she accepted it with the stoicism that characterized so much of her response to life's uncertainties. "Okay," she said simply, "I'll draw all of us, and Grandma too." That evening, after the children were asleep, Michael sat in his study reviewing files for a major development project, his company's bid to convert an aging public housing complex into luxury condominiums. The project had been in planning for months, predating Lily's arrival in his life, but now the details unsettled him in ways they hadn't before. The displacement plan outlined relocation options for current residents, mostly elderly individuals, and families below the poverty line. Reading between the bureaucratic language, Michael recognized the reality. These people would be pushed farther from the city center, from jobs, from the communities they had built, just as Evelyn and Lily had been. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Sarah Reynolds, the housekeeper who had been with the family since before Ethan's birth, stood in the doorway. "I'm sorry to disturb you, Mr. Parker, but there's something you should know," she said, her expression concerned. "It's about Lily." Michael set aside the files. "What is it?" "I found her sleeping on the floor again, sir. When I asked why, she said the bed makes her feel lost." Sarah hesitated. "And she's been saving food in her dresser drawers, hiding it wrapped in napkins." Michael sighed, rubbing his temples. He should have anticipated this. For a child who had lived with scarcity, abundance didn't automatically create security. "Thank you for telling me, Sarah. I'll talk to her." "There's one more thing, sir," Sarah added. "When I was putting away her laundry, I noticed she's refusing to wear most of the new clothes you bought. She keeps wearing the same 2 outfits, washing them herself in the bathroom sink at night." This detail struck Michael as particularly significant. Lily wasn't just uncomfortable with luxury, she was actively resisting it, maintaining connection to her previous life, even as circumstances pulled her away. The next day, instead of sending his driver, Michael took Lily to visit Evelyn himself. On the way, he attempted to address Sarah's observations. "Lily, you know you don't have to save food, right? There will always be more when you need it." Lily glanced at him quickly, then back out the window. "You never know," she replied softly. "Things change." The wisdom in her response, the hard-earned understanding that security was never guaranteed, rendered Michael momentarily speechless. What could he say to a child who had already learned that lesson so thoroughly? At the hospital, Evelyn was sitting in a chair beside her bed, looking stronger than she had in weeks. The doctors reported good progress, though her recovery would be lengthy and require ongoing care. The conversation about what would happen next loomed large, but remained unspoken during these visits. While Lily chatted happily with her grandmother, showing her schoolwork and drawings, Michael stepped into the hallway to take a call from Eleanor. The news wasn't good. "Michael, we have a problem," his attorney said without preamble. "Ethan's Aunt Veronica has filed a formal objection to your guardianship petition." Michael felt his stomach drop. Veronica Wilson, his late wife's sister, had never approved of his parenting style, considering him too work-focused and emotionally distant. They maintained cordial contact for Ethan's sake, but the relationship was strained at best. "On what grounds?" he demanded. "She's claiming this arrangement is disruptive to Ethan's emotional well-being and questioning your judgment. She's requested a full psychological evaluation and home study." Eleanor's voice was grave. "Michael, this complicates things significantly." After ending the call, Michael leaned against the wall, trying to process this new obstacle. Veronica wasn't wrong about his past shortcomings as a father. He had been absent for much of Ethan's early years, delegating parental responsibilities while he built his empire. The irony was that Lily's presence had changed that. For the first time, he was fully engaged in his son's life, present for bedtime stories and school drop-offs, family dinners and weekend outings. When they returned home, Michael found an unexpected visitor waiting in his living room. Veronica Wilson sat primly on the edge of the sofa, her expression a mask of polite concern. "Michael," she greeted him coolly, before her eyes moved to Lily. "And you must be Lily. I've heard so much about you." Lily shrunk back slightly, instinctively recognizing the undercurrents of tension. Michael placed a protective hand on her shoulder. "Lily, why don't you go find Ethan? I think he's in the playroom with Sarah." Once Lily was gone, Veronica's facade dropped. "What are you thinking, Michael? Taking in a homeless child on a whim? Have you considered what this is doing to Ethan?" "Ethan is thriving," Michael replied evenly. "He's happier than I've seen him in years." Veronica scoffed. "He's confused. You've upended his life, brought a stranger into his home, a girl from who knows what background, and you expect me to believe this is healthy?" Michael felt anger rising but kept his voice controlled. "Lily is a remarkable child who has shown more compassion and resilience than most adults I know. And yes, I believe her presence in our home is positive for everyone involved." "The courts may disagree," Veronica countered. "Have you considered the legal implications, the potential risks? This isn't like acquiring a new property, Michael. This is a child's life, 2 children's lives, including your son's." Before Michael could respond, a small voice came from the doorway. "Are you going to take me away?" They turned to find Lily standing there, her face pale, her hands clutching the doorframe. Behind her, Ethan appeared, confusion and alarm evident in his expression. "No one's taking you anywhere," Michael assured her quickly, crossing the room to kneel before her. "Lily, this is Ethan's Aunt Veronica. She's just concerned. That's all." Lily's eyes, wise beyond their years, moved from Michael to Veronica and back again. "People always want to take me away from the people I love," she said quietly. "First from Mom, then from the apartment, and now from Grandma. Is it because I did something wrong? The simple question, delivered with such raw vulnerability, silenced the room. Even Veronica seemed taken aback, her practiced indignation faltering in the face of Lily's genuine pain. "You haven't done anything wrong, sweetheart," Michael assured her, his voice thick with emotion. "Sometimes adults make things complicated when they don't need to be." Ethan moved to stand beside Lily, taking her hand in his. "Aunt Veronica, you can't take Lily away. She's my sister now." The declaration, delivered with the absolute certainty of childhood, hung in the air between the adults. Michael saw something shift in Veronica's expression, a reluctant softening, a recognition that the situation was more nuanced than she had assumed. "No one's taking anyone away right now," Veronica finally said, her tone gentler than before. "I just wanted to talk to your father about some grown-up concerns." Later, after Veronica had left with promises to reconsider her position, Michael found Lily in her room, methodically packing her few possessions into the small bag she had arrived with. "What are you doing?" he asked from the doorway. Lily didn't look up. "Getting ready in case I have to leave." Michael entered the room slowly, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Lily, I promised you wouldn't be abandoned again, and I meant it. I'm going to fight for you to stay with us for as long as you want to be here." Lily's hands stilled. "What about when Grandma gets better? Will you still want me then?" It was the question that had been hovering unspoken between them all. What happened when the immediate crisis passed? When Evelyn was discharged, would this makeshift family they had created dissolve as quickly as it had formed? Michael chose his words carefully. "I want what's best for you, Lily, always, and I think your grandmother wants that too." "But what's best?" Lily pressed, showing the direct clarity that often made Michael feel like he was speaking to someone much older. "Grandma can't go back under the bridge, and she can't take care of me like before." The truth of her assessment hung heavy in the air. Evelyn's recovery would be long, and even when completed, her health would remain fragile. The life they had lived before was no longer sustainable, a reality all of them were slowly coming to accept. "We'll figure it out together," Michael promised, reaching for her hand. "All of us. You're not alone in this anymore, Lily. Neither is your grandmother." Lily studied his face, searching for signs of insincerity. Finding none, she nodded, slowly, some of the tension leaving her small frame. "Okay," she said simply, trusting him in a way that felt both like a gift and an enormous responsibility. That night, Michael made a decision. The development project that would displace families like Lily's and Evelyn's, he would withdraw Parker Development's bid. There would be financial consequences, board disapproval, perhaps even shareholder revolt. But he couldn't reconcile the man he was becoming with the man who would profit from others' displacement. As he drafted the email to his board explaining his decision, Michael glanced at the framed photograph now sitting on his desk. Lily and Ethan at the park, their faces alight with laughter as they flew kites against a blue sky. Some things, he was learning, were worth more than any balance sheet could measure. Chapter 5. The Turning Point. Autumn painted Boston in brilliant hues. Of orange and red as summer gave way to cooler days. 3 months had passed since the day in the park. 3 months of adjustment, learning, and gradual transformation for everyone involved. Evelyn had been discharged from the hospital 2 weeks earlier, but instead of returning to life on the streets, she now occupied the garden apartment of Michael's townhouse, a space with its own entrance and small kitchen, providing both proximity and independence. The arrangement had come after much discussion, with Evelyn initially resistant to accepting what she viewed as charity. "I can't pay rent for a place like this," she had protested from her hospital bed when Michael first proposed the idea. "I'm not asking for rent," Michael had replied. "I'm asking you to help me with Lily. She needs you nearby." It was the perfect approach, appealing to Evelyn's desire to remain central in her granddaughter's life while preserving her dignity. Still, the transition wasn't without challenges. Evelyn struggled with accepting help, with the luxury that surrounded her, with feeling indebted to a man whose world had previously seemed so distant from her own. For Lily, having her grandmother nearby brought a new sense of security. She spent hours in the garden apartment, helping Evelyn organize her few possessions, listening to stories of her mother's childhood, maintaining the connection to her past, even as she cautiously embraced her new present. At school, Lily was beginning to find her footing. Her natural intelligence had quickly become apparent to her teachers, particularly in mathematics and art. Ms. Wilson, the art teacher, had taken a special interest in Lily's talent, providing extra materials and encouragement. Her watercolors, vivid scenes of city life as seen through a child's honest eyes, had been selected for the school's fall exhibition. "You've captured something special here," Ms. Wilson told her, holding up Lily's painting of a red balloon floating above the Boston skyline. "There's both sadness and hope in this piece. That's not easy to achieve." Lily had shrugged, uncomfortable with praise. "It's just what I remember." The exhibition opening coincided with the final court hearing regarding Lily's placement. Michael had spent weeks preparing, working with Eleanor to address every possible concern. Veronica had withdrawn her formal objection after several supervised visits with the children, during which even she couldn't deny the positive dynamic that had developed between Lily and Ethan. "I still think this is unorthodox," she had told Michael privately. "But I can see she's good for him. He's happier, more thoughtful." It was true. Ethan, once prone to tantrums when denied his wishes, now demonstrated surprising empathy and consideration. He proudly introduced Lily as his sister, shared his toys without prompting, and had even started a giving jar where he saved a portion of his allowance for kids who need balloons and stuff. The morning of the hearing, Michael found Lily sitting on the window seat in her room, dressed in the navy blue dress they had chosen together for the occasion. Her hair, once tangled and unkempt, now fell in neat waves around her face, though she had adamantly refused the elaborate hairstyle suggested by the stylist Michael had hired. "Too fancy," she had declared. "I want to look like me." "Ready." "For today?" Michael asked, joining her at the window. Lily nodded, though her expression remained solemn. What if the judge says no? Michael had prepared for this question, consulting with both Eleanor and a child psychologist about how best to address Lily's fears without making promises he couldn't keep. "The judge wants what's best for you," he answered carefully. "And we've shown him that you're happy and healthy here, that you're doing well in school, and that your grandmother is nearby." "But what if—" "Lily," Michael interrupted gently, "whatever happens today, you will be taken care of. You will be loved. That's a promise I can make." She studied his face, searching for certainty. "Okay," she said finally, "I believe you." The family court was less imposing than Michael had feared, designed to be comfortable for children, with colorful murals and smaller-scale furniture in the waiting areas. Still, the institutional nature of the building seemed to affect Lily, who grew quieter as they approached the courtroom, her hand gripping Michael's tightly. Inside, Judge Martinez, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, greeted them warmly. The proceedings were closed to the public, with only the relevant parties present: Michael and Eleanor, Evelyn with her court-appointed advocate, the guardian ad litem assigned to represent Lily's interests, and various social workers and court officials. "This is an unusual case," Judge Martinez began, reviewing the file before her. "We have a child who was homeless, now living with a non-relative who is seeking formal guardianship, while the biological grandmother, the previous guardian, remains involved but unable to provide primary care." She looked up, her gaze moving between Michael and Evelyn. "I've reviewed all the reports, home studies, and recommendations. The picture they paint is largely positive, but I still have concerns about the long-term stability of this arrangement." Michael felt his throat tighten. Despite all their preparation, nothing was certain. Beside him, Lily sat perfectly still, only the slight trembling of her hand in his revealing her anxiety. "Mr. Parker," Judge Martinez continued, "your financial resources are not in question, but guardianship is not about providing material comfort. It's about consistent emotional support, boundaries, guidance, things that your professional history suggests might be challenging for you." Before Michael could respond, Evelyn spoke up from her seat. "Your Honor, may I address the court?" Judge Martinez nodded, surprised. "Of course, Mrs. Collins." Evelyn straightened in her chair, summoning the dignity that had sustained her through years of hardship. "I've known Michael Parker for only a few months, but in that time I've seen something remarkable. I've seen a man learn to see, truly see, another human being." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "When we were first brought into Mr. Parker's home, I was suspicious. I thought perhaps we were a project for him, a way to feel good about himself. But I was wrong." The courtroom was silent, everyone's attention fixed on this woman whose life had been so difficult, yet who spoke with such clear-eyed wisdom. "My granddaughter gave away a balloon," Evelyn continued. "A simple thing to most people, but it was everything to her at that moment. That act of kindness woke something in Michael Parker that I believe was always there, just buried under years of focusing on the wrong kind of success." Judge Martinez leaned forward slightly. "And you believe he can provide the emotional stability Lily needs?" "I believe," Evelyn replied, "that Michael and Lily have already formed a bond that would be cruel to break. And I believe that sometimes the most unexpected families are the ones that teach us the most about what it means to truly care for one another." The judge nodded thoughtfully, then turned to the guardian ad litem. "And what is your assessment of Lily's wishes in this matter?" The guardian, a middle-aged woman named Patricia Wong, consulted her notes. "Lily has expressed a strong desire to remain with Mr. Parker and his son. She describes feeling safe and important in their home. She's particularly adamant about maintaining her relationship with Ethan, whom she now considers a brother." Judge Martinez sighed, setting aside her papers. "In cases like these, there is rarely a perfect solution. We're trying to create stability for a child whose life has been defined by its absence." She looked directly at Lily. "Would you like to say anything, Lily? This decision affects you most of all." Michael felt Lily's grip tighten momentarily. Before she stood, her posture straight despite her nervousness. "I want to stay with Michael and Ethan," she said clearly, "and I want Grandma to stay too." "And you're happy there?" the judge asked gently. Lily nodded. "I am now. At first everything was too big and too much, but now it feels like—" She searched for the right words. "Like I have two homes in one place, the fancy house where Ethan and Michael live and the garden house where Grandma is, and I belong in both." The simplicity and truth of her answer seemed to touch everyone in the room. Judge Martinez smiled slightly, then grew serious. "Again, Mr. Parker, are you fully prepared for the responsibility you're taking on? Guardianship is not temporary. It's a commitment to this child's well-being until she reaches adulthood." Michael stood, his voice steady despite the emotion he felt. "Your Honor, when Lily gave that balloon to my son, she changed my life. She showed me what I'd been missing, not just as a father to Ethan, but as a human being in this world. I can't go back to who I was before. I don't want to." He paused, swallowing hard. "I know my background makes me an unlikely guardian. I know my past doesn't suggest I'm capable of the kind of selfless love a child needs. But Lily has taught me what that looks like, and I'm learning every day. I'm committed to being the person she and Ethan deserve, for as long as they need me." Judge Martinez considered his words, then nodded decisively. "I am granting the petition for guardianship with the following conditions. Mrs. Collins will maintain an active role in Lily's life. Regular reports will be submitted to the court for the first year, and the family will participate in monthly sessions with a family therapist to help navigate this transition." She smiled at Lily. "It seems you've found your family, young lady. An unusual one, perhaps, but sometimes those are the strongest kind." The relief in the room was palpable. Lily threw her arms around Michael's waist, burying her face against him. Evelyn wiped away tears, nodding in approval. Even Eleanor, usually stoic in professional settings, allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction. Outside the courthouse, autumn sunlight bathed them in golden warmth. Ethan, who had been waiting with Sarah, ran to meet them on the steps. "What happened? Can Lily stay? Is everything okay?" The questions tumbled out in his excitement. Michael lifted his son into his arms. "Yes, Lily is staying. Everything is "Officially okay now," Ethan cheered, wriggling to be put down so he could hug Lily, who accepted his embrace with a smile that lit up her entire face. It was the most unguarded Michael had seen her since she came into their lives, a child allowing herself, finally, to believe in security. That evening, they attended the school art exhibition as a family. Michael, Ethan, Lily, and Evelyn, who insisted on using her walker, rather than the wheelchair she sometimes needed for longer outings. Lily's painting of the red balloon held a place of honor, its vibrant colors drawing attention from visitors. "Your daughter has remarkable talent," one parent commented to Michael as they stood before the painting. Michael opened his mouth to correct the assumption, then paused. "Thank you," he said instead. "She amazes me every day." Across the room he caught Lily watching him, her expression questioning. She had heard the exchange, understood the moment of decision in his response. Michael smiled at her, a private acknowledgement between them. Some bonds went beyond legal definitions, beyond blood, beyond the conventional understanding of family. Later that night, after celebrations and congratulations, after Ethan had fallen asleep clutching his favorite stuffed dinosaur, and Evelyn had retired to her apartment with a new book Michael had given her, Lily appeared in the doorway of Michael's study. "Can I ask you something?" she said, still in her blue dress though she had changed into her preferred fuzzy socks. "Anything," Michael replied, setting aside the work he'd been half-heartedly reviewing. "That lady called me your daughter, and you didn't say I wasn't." Lily's expression was thoughtful, not accusatory. "Why?" Michael considered his answer carefully. "Because in all the ways that matter most, that's what you are becoming to me. Not to replace your mother or change who you were before, but to add to your story going forward." Lily nodded, absorbing this. "I think," she began, then stopped, gathering courage. "I think maybe that's what you're becoming to me, too. Not instead of my real dad, but in addition." The words, offered hesitantly but honestly, were a gift Michael hadn't dared hope for. "I would be honored," he said simply, his voice thick, with emotion. Lily approached his desk, placing something on it before turning to leave. "Good night, Michael." She hadn't yet used the word dad, and might not for a long time, if ever. That was okay. When she was gone, Michael looked down at what she had left. A small watercolor painting, clearly done recently, showing 4 figures holding hands in front of a house. 2 tall, 2 small, one with a walker, all connected by lines of bright color that wove between and around them, binding them together. At the top, in careful lettering, "My family." Michael placed it carefully in the center of his desk, more valuable than any contract or deed that had ever occupied that space. Outside his window, Boston continued its evening rhythm, unaware that within one of its many homes, something rare and precious had taken root, a family formed not by obligation or expectation, but by choice, by seeing one another clearly, and by the transformative power of a simple act of kindness. Chapter 6. Full Circle. 5 years later, Copley Square Park bloomed in the late spring sunshine. The space had been transformed since that fateful day, renovated through a community initiative funded by the Parker Foundation, with new playground equipment, garden spaces, and a central art installation that drew visitors from across the city. Michael Parker stood beneath a flowering cherry tree, watching as 12-year-old Lily adjusted the easel for her live painting demonstration. Part of the park's annual arts festival, the event showcased local talent of all ages, and Lily, now recognized as something of a prodigy, had been invited as a featured young artist. "Is this straight, Dad?" she called, squinting critically at the canvas. "Perfect," Michael replied, still feeling a flutter of emotion whenever she used that word. Dad. It had first emerged 2 years ago, tentatively at first, then with increasing confidence as their relationship solidified. Never replacing the memory of her birth parents, but creating space for new connections alongside the old. Nearby, 10-year-old Ethan helped Evelyn arrange her display of hand-knitted items, a hobby she had discovered during her recovery and transformed into a small business with Lily's artistic input on patterns and colors. At 72, Evelyn moved more slowly now, but with purpose and dignity. Her health stabilized through proper care and the security of knowing her granddaughter was thriving. "Look who's here," Ethan announced, pointing toward the park entrance, where a group of children in matching t-shirts was arriving, led by several adults. Michael smiled in recognition. The children were from the Bridge Home, a transitional housing and education center for families experiencing homelessness. It had been his first major philanthropic project, created in partnership with social service professionals and, most importantly, people who had experienced homelessness themselves. The idea had come during one of their family therapy sessions, when Lily had expressed her confusion about their unique situation. "Why did we get lucky when so many others don't?" she had asked, her face troubled by the unfairness of it all. It was a question Michael couldn't answer. Why some children found safety while others remained vulnerable, why some stories took unexpected turns toward hope while others continued in hardship. But it had sparked a conversation about responsibility, about turning personal transformation into broader change. The Bridge Home had opened 18 months ago in a renovated Parker development property. Instead of the luxury condominiums originally planned, the building now housed 15 families in transition, with comprehensive support services, education programs, and a pathway to permanent housing. It wasn't a solution to systemic problems, but it was a beginning, a concrete response to Lily's question about what made their family lucky. "Mr. Parker," called Teresa Rodriguez, the center's director, as she approached with her group. "The children are so excited about the art workshop." Michael greeted her warmly. "Lily's got everything ready. She couldn't sleep last night, she was so nervous about teaching." Teresa laughed. "She'll be wonderful, she always connects with our kids so naturally." It was true. Despite now attending one of Boston's most elite private schools on a full art scholarship, Lily remained grounded in a way that sometimes surprised people who didn't know her story. She volunteered weekly at the Bridge Home, teaching art classes, and simply spending time with children whose experiences mirrored her own past. "It helps them to see her," Teresa had once explained to Michael. "To know that their current circumstances don't define their future." As the workshop began, Michael stepped back to observe, marveling at the young woman Lily was becoming. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, her movements confident as she demonstrated watercolor techniques to the attentive children. There were echoes of the wary 7-year-old he had first met, but transformed through security, education, and love into something luminous. "She's remarkable," said a voice beside him. Veronica Wilson had arrived, carrying a portfolio of her own artwork. Once Michael's critic, she had gradually become an ally and eventually a friend as she witnessed the genuine family they had created. "She is," Michael agreed, "though I can take very little credit for that." Veronica shook her head. "Don't underestimate what stability and love can do, Michael. You gave her the space to become herself." Across the lawn, Ethan had joined the art class, not as a participant, but as an assistant, helping distribute supplies and offer encouragement to the younger children. His relationship with Lily remained special, part sibling, part best friend, bound by the memory of a red balloon that had connected their vastly different worlds. The festival continued throughout the afternoon, drawing crowds that mingled across Boston's usual social boundaries. Michael had stepped back from direct management of Parker Development 2 years earlier, appointing a progressive CEO who shared his evolved vision while he focused on the foundation's work. The company now maintained a commitment that at least 30% of all new developments include affordable housing, a policy that had initially alarmed shareholders but ultimately enhanced both their reputation and long-term profitability. As the day's activities wound down, Michael noticed Lily standing alone before the park's central art installation, a large metal sculpture of a red heart-shaped balloon, its string extending down to rest in an open bronze hand. Designed by a renowned sculptor, it had been installed the previous year to commemorate the park's renovation. Few people knew the true story behind the sculpture. The plaque simply read, "For the small acts of kindness that change lives." But For their family, it represented the beginning of everything. Michael approached quietly, standing beside Lily as she gazed up at the gleaming red heart catching the late afternoon sunlight. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. Lily smiled, a thoughtful expression on her face. "I was just remembering how it felt to hold that balloon. How it seemed like the most valuable thing in the world to me at that moment. And then you gave it away," Michael said softly. "I didn't know it would change everything," Lily admitted. "I just saw Ethan crying and reacted." Michael placed an arm around her shoulders. "That's what makes it so remarkable. You had no agenda, no expectation of return, just pure compassion." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching, as festival-goers took photos beside the sculpture, unaware of its personal significance to the pair observing them. "Dad," Lily said finally, "I've been thinking about something important." Michael recognized her serious tone. "What is it?" "I want to start a scholarship for kids from Bridge Home who want to attend arts programs." Her voice grew more confident as she continued, "I could use some of the money from my sold paintings and maybe the foundation could match it." The request shouldn't have surprised him, yet Michael found himself momentarily speechless. At 12, Lily was already thinking about how to extend opportunities to others, how to create pathways similar to those that had opened for her. "I think that's an excellent idea," he said when he found his voice. "We can talk to the foundation. Board next week?" Lily nodded, satisfied. "I already have a name for it." "Let me guess," Michael smiled. "The Red Balloon Scholarship?" "How did you know?" Lily laughed, leaning against his side. "Just a hunch," he replied, pulling her into a proper hug. The festival was ending, vendors packing up their displays as the spring evening settled over the park. Ethan bounded over, followed more slowly by Evelyn to report on the day's successes. Together they gathered Lily's art supplies and began the short walk home, a family created by circumstance but sustained by choice, by daily decisions to see and value one another. As they left the park, a vendor was selling balloons near the exit, a colorful bouquet dancing in the gentle breeze. Without hesitation, Michael purchased one, bright red and heart-shaped, and presented it to Lily. With a smile. "For old time's sake," he said. Lily accepted it, her fingers wrapping around the string just as they had 5 years earlier. But instead of keeping it, she turned and offered it to a small girl watching them with wide eyes from a nearby bench. The child's expression transformed with delight as she accepted the unexpected gift. "For new beginnings," Lily said, her eyes meeting Michael's with shared understanding. The simple gesture, a balloon passing from one hand to another, contained within it the entire story of their family, a perfect circle of kindness given and received, transforming everyone it touched. As they continued home through the streets of Boston, the red balloon rose above them, a bright spot against the darkening sky.